Good afternoon, Suidlanders. How are you this magnificent Friday afternoon? Yeah, I'm looking out of my window and it is magnificent. It is a magnificent afternoon, but it has been blazing hot. And I don't handle the heat well at the best of times. So I haven't enjoyed the day, but it's much cooler now. And it's much easier to enjoy it. Today is Friday the 13th of January. It was on Friday the 13th of October 1307 that Philip the Fair of France, ordered or actually it went back a month before, but we'll keep the story simple, ordered the arrest of the Knights Templar, who were the precursors to Freemasonry. And that's well recorded in a book called the Hiram Key, if you're interested. Arrested and tortured and one thing and another with the connivance. Letters had been sent out across Europe a month previously with the connivance of Pope Clement V, although he was a little bit unsure about how much he wanted to get involved. Anyway, so I'm sure that the trading on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange was very quiet today, and many of you wouldn't have had bosses at work as they took the day off, as Freemasons traditionally do. Not always and not everybody, but it is a bit of a thing to treat the day in a certain way. Yeah, that's about that. This is Suidlanders Week in Review for the 13th of January 2023, and we've got lots of exciting stuff to discuss. I've got a big list here that goes back to last Saturday, because we do this every Friday, and on Saturdays sometimes there's stuff coming through even from the Friday itself. So what do we have to show you on this list? Magnus Haystack revealed that South Africa's government debt, national debt owed by the government, by the state, not, for instance, Eskom sovereign bonds, but South Africa's national debt is 4 trillion rand, 115 billion, 327 million, and 9,623 rand. Now, that is not a large number by the standards of many countries in the world, but I would say that it is a large number by South African standards, and those of you who follow these things will be well aware that the debt to GDP ratio has worsened very much in recent years. Now, I should explain this because some of you will be offended by that comparison, and partly rightly so. Debt and GDP are not correlated. The one doesn't really depend upon the other, but it is a loose means of illustrating that a country that only makes this much GDP in a year might have that much debt, and it's kind of an indicator, although it shouldn't necessarily be, because let's put it this way. Let's say you earned 100,000 rand a year and you had 100,000 rand debt. But in your year of earning 100,000 rand, which is 8,500 rand a month, you only had costs and overheads and so on. Let's say you inherited a house, you didn't have a bond. When your parent died, you got you got one or two motor cars, and your kids had scholarships to schools, and you might have a very healthy amount of money left over at the end of every month to serve that debt. So it's, as I say, not a directly correlated thing, but it is an indicator. And in recent years, it has gotten much worse. And Magnus Haystack makes the point here, it's a sleeper until rising global interest rates push this into the open. Expect this to become an issue in about 2 years from now as some of those cheap loans come up for repayment. Now, I put it to you, not that I know better than Magnus Haystack in his field, but given that we as Suidlanders don't look at things from a fleshly, doctrinaire point of view. We look at things from a slightly higher point of view. I would say to you that the research that we've been doing over recent years, and much of which we've shared with you, indicates that rising global interest rates are going to become a big problem long before late 2024 or early 2025, 2 years from now, for whatever that's worth. Right. Then we heard on Saturday that the most transmissible COVID variant has been discovered in South Africa. And we heard that there were 4 patients in a hospital. I think it's called the Nelson Mandela Hospital or Nelson Mandela University Hospital in Port Elizabeth. One of the people is a patient, or was a patient at the time, and 3 of the 4 people discovered to have contracted this most transmissible variant of COVID were or are employees of the hospital. The variant, which is nicknamed Kraken being the dragon, sea dragon of a sort, nicknamed the Kraken, is known as, its formal name is XBB.1.5. XBB.1.5. So we're all supposed to be afraid of that. And then we discovered on Saturday, or it could have been late on Friday, but I don't believe that we covered it in last week's weekend review. I hope not. On Saturday, we discovered that Andre de Ruyter, excuse me, I've got one of those eyelash things, you know, when it gets painful, wants to come out and pokes inside. That Andre de Ruyter had survived an attempt upon his life. And we've covered that quite well in other videos, so I'm not going to flog the horse anymore, except let it suffice to say that it is a very, very ominous sign when 2 days after a guy resigns, on the 12th of December he resigned, on the 13th it was made public, on the 14th, they attempted to assassinate him by putting cyanide in his coffee. It is a very ominous thing when the great powers that be in the system of patronage that is the plundering of this country under the African National Congress, when those people at the who occupy the apex of the hierarchy of power and implicitly of criminality in this country, attempt to assassinate a guy after he reduces his threat to them. They still say, let's go ahead. It's obviously was planned long in advance. Let's continue with our plot. Don't take your foot off the pedal now. See it through to the end. Murder him. Clearly, some very powerful and influential politicians, because that is who is at the apex of the hierarchy, are terrified of Andre de Ruyter revealing what Suidlanders has been endeavoring to explain for years, namely that this is an African National Congress thing, or these many Malaysers in South Africa are driven by the African National Congress. They are not incidental observers. They're not bystanders. goodness me. Right. Let's move on. Skipping through. I don't want to talk about the Marsalspoort attack because it angers me so much that I'm liable to perhaps get a bit carried away. But I will remind you of what the president said afterwards about white people and they have no more power and so on. And him lionizing, lauding those two teenagers, inviting them to be special guests at an event on, I believe it was Sunday, as special guests. You know, those two guys, special guests up there on the podium while he's standing behind the lectern, giving the spiel and congratulating them and referring to them and so on. Very, very, very provocative and a sign of the times. We've had a number of incidents over this past week. I'm not going to go into them. It's not worth it. You're all familiar with them. They've been reasonably widely covered, of school children not being able to find places in the new school year. And it's problematic. It's problematic. It's going to get worse. It is not going to get better. I'm sorry for the discouragement to those of you who still have kids at school. So do I, but as it happens, because of where he lives and his mom, he's able to attend a very good school, so he's going to be affected much later. And he's already 13, he's in his first year of high school, and so he only has this year and another 4 years to go, 5 years to go. I suppose I'm fortunate, but those of you who don't have a lot of money or scholarships or don't have access to the best of schools, who have young kids entering school now or who are still, perhaps only halfway through primary school, my heart goes out to you, because this thing is going to get much worse. We saw a number of reports surface again, as we have been seeing for the past 3 months, roughly, going back to October-ish, once the cold started to encroach in Europe. As I say now, we've seen a number this week again, of Europeans struggling with the cold, problems heating homes, the price of electricity, people collecting firewood in forests, special coupons being dished out to people to permit them to collect firewood. The story is an ongoing thing. Europe is being broken through this power crisis. Oh, that's right. Goodness me, I had forgotten all about it. On Tuesday, a video emerged out of the blue of South African soldiers in Mozambique in November, tossing bodies onto a fire, a little sort of a funeral pyre of sorts, made out of a dear me, there's a word for it, and I know the word. A bed, a lateen bed, a rimpi bed, but in that part of the world there's a specific word for it. Of course, absolutely scandalous, absolutely deplorable. Interestingly, I got a call from a guy in the USA who's on our Suidlanders foreign friends group. And this guy's a gun nut of the first order. I mean, you know, these are, it's something else, huh? I've witnessed this with my own eyes. They buy ammunition by the 44-gallon drum. Now, a 44-gallon drum, we all know what that is. It's 210 or 211 or technically 213 liters. Trust me, I once looked this up to be sure that I didn't make a mistake when talking about it. You know, gallons, liters, spending some time in the USA for Suidlanders. And so this sort of 211 liter drum. They buy them ammunition by the 210 liter drum, 44-gallon drum. Anyway, what this guy doesn't know about guns, there isn't to be known. And he was telling me that the rifle featured in that video is, you see, I don't want to mess this up, but it's like 100,000 rands worth of rifle. The scope cost this much, and this, and he saw one of those last week, and his friend bought one of the other, and then if you, and that one, so yeah, the very, very well equipped soldiers, apparently. So I'm told. I wouldn't know. Boom, 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 boom. Oh. On Wednesday, we got a copy of, a recording of a radio show in the USA in which a very, very famous, of many decades, conservative radio broadcaster called Jeff Rents interviewed a man called Mitchell Henderson, who, bit of a pain in the neck to listen to, but this guy Mitchell Henderson has very good credentials, in which Mitchell Henderson revealed a speech, an address given by Vladimir Putin on Saturday last. We couldn't find any substantiation of it. I wanted to feature it as the International Daily on Wednesday, but Ernst was a bit hesitant because there was, no substantiation or verification. I felt that, if it's Jeff Rents and Mitchell Henderson, you can take their word for it. They never make mistakes. But I understood Aaron's point, and we ended up featuring something else. So I mentioned this to you advisedly, because it may well be that we were right, or Ernst was right, to err on the side of caution, given that this has not been verified. But Putin gave apparently an address to a limited group of people, I suppose, because it wasn't public, wasn't recorded by television, can't be found anywhere on the internet as yet, although these guys have unbelievable sources. And we could go into many examples where they've been very far ahead of the curve. But yes, so take this whence it comes. We're not swearing to the veracity of it, but he gave a very brief but very strongly worded speech that seems to suggest that he's on the verge of throwing some tough punches. And he says that he's sick and tired, sick and tired of the West, and any day now they're going to get a hiding. That's the gist of it in my own words, but very, very, very strong. Yeah, and then, ladies and gentlemen, man, Wednesday, were we not told on Tuesday, was it not Tuesday that they said to us we would go into stage 6, but that it would only be applied in the evening, and during the course of the day it would be stage 4. Now I remind you of something that we've discussed here before. One Lungile Mashele was interviewed on EWN or ENCA in early December. And during that interview, he said that he had been informed through his inside contacts. He came out of the blue. Who knows whether Lungile Mashele has any clue what he's talking about? He may be, and I say this not with disrespect, but we know that this phenomenon exists in our country. He may be a deployed cadre of the ANC, or a general run-of-the-mill beneficiary, unmerited beneficiary of, of black economic empowerment. So we treated what he had to say with some caution, but he seemed quite sure of himself when he said that stage 6 will come in at the end of December. Now, not many days later, lo and behold, we get promised the stage 6 is the game is on. That's the Tuesday, but it's only going to be at night. By Wednesday, we were in stage 6. And I don't know how it is with you guys. I chatted to my mom about this the other day, and it seems as if certain municipalities are not having the same level of blackout imposed upon them. Here in Van der Kloof, it's 11 and a half hours a day. 11 and a half hours a day. Can you believe it? And stage 6, I've explained this to you before, means 6 times a factor of 6. I'm not going to go into the whole thing again. Over 4 days. 6 sixes are 36. Over 4 days divided by 4 is 9. We're getting 11 and a half hours a day. But there has been a suggestion that we may be being punished for all the money that the African National Congress Council stole previously, leading to a non-payment of our electricity. We learned during the course of this week that in November, the Bureau for Labor Statistics in the USA had registered, if that's the right word, had recorded a 38%, I'm going to quote verbatim, a 38% increase in the price of vegetables in November alone. November alone. Not year on year, what? 38%. It's incredible. I expect you to be incredulous. I am incredulous. I do not take that at face value because I simply cannot believe that in 1 month across the entire USA there was an average increase of 38% in the price of vegetables. But that has been reported by, I double checked, in fact I quadruple checked. That has been reported by numerous credible, good, reputable media sources in the USA. Allegedly, and I'm not going to harp on this, I'm not going to go on and on about it, but let me remind you that we have been warning since March of 2020. March of 2021. That a global famine is advancing upon the world. It is going to hit us very hard, ladies and gentlemen. Right, what do we have here? We've got Vessel telling us about his thing. Right, yes, so it was Wednesday, fase 6 beurtkrag, nou heel dag ingestel. It was on Marula Media. We're seeing tremendous developments, but it's an ongoing thing. It's not topical. It's not just for this week. It's not, a Suidlanders week in review thing, but I'll mention it in passing. Tremendous developments in the world gold and silver markets. They are preparing to explode. Oh, the Federal Depository Insurance Council held a meeting of which 2 recordings were leaked. This is in the USA, Federal Deposit Insurance Council. These are the people who ensure that people's money doesn't get lost through banking malfeasance, or who are supposed to. 2 videos of the recent meeting were leaked and tweeted on, I believe, Wednesday. And these very, very, very powerful men are talking about an absolute financial collapse, not as in a hypothetical manner, as the one guy said. What were his exact words? We know that it is going to happen. Not in the year 2093. They were talking, and if you've seen the videos on my groups, then you will know, talking about it as an event for which they must prepare and consider and contemplate and assess and analyze and what have you now. So within days, weeks, months, a year, we may expect this thing, but we've discussed this already very much. You know about that. Oh, and then the all-time classic. 7 people on a boat on Pongola Lake in the Pongola Nature Reserve in northern Natal, looking for elephants along the lake. At least 4 of them, as far as we can tell, going by clues in statements made. Foreigners, foreign tourists looking for elephants. A group of foreign tourists and an elephant guide and a duty driving the boat, and perhaps a guy with a rifle. So 7 people, of which at least 4 were foreign tourists, fired upon by elephant poachers. This is the madness of South Africa. I should calm myself down before I fly off the handle, but just unbelievable. This is the week. Then Peter Attard Montalto. If you don't know him, he's a bigwig at Intellidex, which is a highly regarded economic analysis company. I say that in layman's terms. I'm sure that if Peter Attard Montalto or one of his peers, one of his cohort, watched this video and heard that terminology, they'd be horrified. But I speak as a layman. Well known in Johannesburg. You'll see sometimes there'll be advertisements. Peter Attard Montalto speaking at the such and such economic expo at Sandton Convention Center on Saturday the 13th of July. Said on the Money Show on 702 that stage 7 load shedding or higher will be here by the middle of the year. And then I refer again to that Lungile Mashele. He said that by the end of December, stage 6 would come in. And he was only out by a little bit. And he said later, stage 8. He was quite explicit about that. This guy saying exactly the same thing. We're going to get on to KW Miller in a minute. Don't worry about that. Then, on Thursday, NERSA approved an 18.65% electricity tariff hike for Eskom. We're going to dig into that in another video next week, I believe. And we're going to add up all of the electricity increases over years. You're going to be horrified. They have been far greater than you may realize. Gary Kutsia died yesterday. I was very sorry about that because I'm 52 years old, so that you can imagine that in his heyday, in the early 1980s, I was an impressionable young boy of, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 years old. He was the man. An absolute hero to all of us, wasn't he? Very sad. Lisa Marie Presley died of, you guessed it, cardiac problems at the age of 54. Moving on. Oh, a few other deaths of sudden adult death syndrome. And man, listen to this. This is in USA Today. USA Today has, like all modern media, a website and a this and a that and a Twitter account and a Facebook page. But USA Today is a newspaper, or was traditionally a newspaper, that you could buy anywhere in the USA. Whereas in fact most, not all, but most newspapers in the USA were traditionally very much area bound. And every region had its newspaper. Like in Natal, when I was young, the Daily News and the Natal Mercury were Durban newspapers. The Post was the Pietermaritzburg newspaper, and so it went on. We didn't read a national newspaper every day, like kind of the Citizen or Beeld or something like that. So this national newspaper of the USA has an article, online article, under its health section. Cardiac arrest can happen to children. What parents of kids in sports should know. Sadly, I can't say any more than that. Although I hope very much in my heart that that person who wrote that nee. Genoeg is genoeg. DA beplan massa-aksie na NERSA 18,6% tariefverhoging goedgekeur. Of goedkeur. NERSA goedkeur die tariefverhoging aansoek deur Eskom. I can't take it seriously, so I'm not going to talk about it. A couple of days ago, on the 10th, that would be Tuesday, the National Coronavirus Command Council met, and they are urging more testing. They want us to go back into this mode of treating the new coronavirus that we spoke about earlier very seriously, push it hard, the testing, the hysteria, the neurosis, the drama. So brace yourselves, who knows? TV licenses. They want us, but this is a long ongoing thing. This is not a new thing. It's just resurfaced again. They want everybody who's got a screen, as I have here, to pay a TV license, whether or not I watch SABC, which in fact I haven't done since the year 2000, early 2011. That's the thing. SAA, we all know the story there. And I only mention it because it's cropped up a couple of times in stories in the media this week. The much smaller SAA. And it's so tragic. Absolutely tragic. How an airline that was once one of, not the best. It was never the best. That's a bull dust story. Don't believe it. But was one of the, let's say, top 10 airlines in the world, is now reduced to this nothingness under the African National Congress. And last but not least, we're going to return briefly to Eskom. K.W. Miller, the American guy who specializes in doing big turnarounds, either of countries or of power entities. In other words, he's in that field, large-scale power generation. And given that power generation is at the base of all activities in a state, commercial activities, industrial activities, the power is required for modern high-speed finance, for an economy to thrive, even for political and social activity to take place. Everything is driven by power in any modern state. So it is that by extension, being a power specialist, by extension, Jan van der Merwe sent me a very good thing on this, on him. By extension, he is also in the space of resurrecting societies that have kind of collapsed under the weight of bad power policies and finance mistakes and economic suicide and so on. He, the American guy, you all know him, you've all seen him a dozen times, has got a new video out that I believe came out yesterday. I only saw it this afternoon for the first time. He ended the video in tears. Go and have a look for yourself. Not the whole live stream. There's a short form video, about 11 minutes and something long. He ends in tears. Guys, we have been warning you of this since 2018, very explicitly. We've had a lot to say about it. I want to tell you now, I thought very carefully about this while I was in the kitchen before I began this video, standing over the counter, pouring this this matter is very serious. Notwithstanding what K.W. Miller had to say, we have an impeccable track record on this. No entity in South Africa, including Chris Yelland and Ted Blom, comes close to Suidlanders' accurate forecasts of the demise of Eskom. It is coming to a head. And in K.W. Miller's words, now is the time to prepare for the worst. Mr. Miller and I have been discussing this since September, frequently. And I made some forecasts that they're coming to. I mean, there's just, sometimes it's easy to be right if you apply yourself to a matter. You don't have to be a guru or have some special talent or, it's very difficult to be wrong if you apply yourself. And that's all I did. I earn a salary. I applied myself. And I want to tell you that this matter is very grave. This Eskom thing is very severe. And I urge you, before God, please prepare as best you can now. I'm not talking about whatever we may have said a year or 2 years ago. We were accurate. We said it would get worse, and we spoke about various things like the diesel and the coal and the money and the death spiral that I recorded in one video that was revealed by some specialists to a group of millionaires in Johannesburg. Very analytical academic report that Suidlanders managed to get hold of. I'm talking about how bad is the moment now. Now is the moment. There'll be good days. There'll still be some good days. But by and large, South Africa is in big trouble by virtue of Eskom. Anyway, thank you for watching this video. Quite long, 38 minutes. Hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was educational. I hope that you learned something. And I hope that knowledge empowers you, no matter what it may be about. That something this week that we've covered, something that's occurred this week that we've covered, has helped you to know a little bit more, cope a little bit better, and be a little bit ahead of the curve, ahead of the rest, as we go into what promises to be, so far, the annus horribilis of our lives, to quote Queen Elizabeth II, the horrible year of her life. A bad year of some 20 years ago. Anyway, there you go. Thank you very much. Goodbye, and God bless all of you.